Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Wisdom Wednesday, the Greatest Salesman podcast. My name is Dan McCormick, the ambassador for the Og Mandino Company. And if you're new to our show, we're here every Wednesday at 2 o'clock Pacific time with the greatest salespeople in the world, some of my greatest friends, some of the greatest experiences. And we are live on Facebook and on YouTube. We love your comments. Feel free to share, chime in, tell us who you are, where you're from. Tell us, you can even put pictures of your favorite book, your favorite scrolls up on the screen as we go. You can say hi to my guest. Yeah, here he is right there. I got that color right behind me here. That's a beautiful one. And it is awesome to welcome you to the podcast each week. And if you're new to the show, we love your comments. We love your likes, your follows. If you go to the podcast site and you go to The Greatest Salesman, you can also comment, leave a review. We would love that. And certainly you can feel free to share this onto your page if you're on Facebook and you have others that would like to watch it or a group that would like to see it later. Put the link up and it's going to be great. It's good to see all these people chiming in from around the world already. We got Canada, East Coast, West Coast. Good to have everybody. Tell us who you are and where you're from. And, for those that aren't familiar with the great Og Mandino, it was 52 plus years ago now when on that famous Amway stage, when Rich DeVos stood up and shared this book and put Og on the map after going through literally what he calls 10 years of a living hell, being addicted to the bottle, fighting the battles of life, of relationships, career, finance, you name it. He had all the problems. One day, things changed. He met W. Clement Stone that took him to a whole new life, from Success Magazine, selling insurance and being exposed to all those amazing people that W. Clement Stone was in that circle with, Napoleon Hill and Zig Ziglar and so many others. But it is so great to have you here today, everybody that may be listening in. We really look forward to sharing with you every week just a little bit about kind of the unique living philosophy that Og had, the unique way of writing, the unique way of expressing humility and gratitude, and really teaching us great principles, habits, and reference points about life. And this is episode number 32. And I've been looking forward to this for some time. One of my favorite people in the world, so well-read, so fired up, so athletic. We've been around the globe together, honestly. And we've known each other now for 17 years, I believe. And he's none other than live from Oregon today, I believe. Charley Patterson, welcome to the show. And how are you?
Thanks, Dan. I'm great. Honored to be here and thankful for your incredible mentorship and coaching that you've given me over these last 17 years that have applied to every area of my life.
Yeah, we've had a lot of good times and a lot of great memories, whether we're in Israel or we're on the lake of Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, where I love to be. And it's just really great to have you here. And, Charley, in the world of podcasts, in the world of online social media today, people's attentions can get grabbed so fast. And what I love to do at the beginning of every show is knowing that you're sitting in that hot seat today, that chair that I call the greatest salesperson in the world. I love to just right out of the gate say, I wonder if you could share with all the aspiring entrepreneurs that listen, whether it's live today or it's 6 weeks, 6 months, or even 6 years from now when they're on a podcast, right? So I wonder if you could say, what are 3 things you think that have shaped your life and put you in that chair of the greatest salesman in the world?
Yes. And thank you for asking me the questions in advance. And I really enjoy just thinking about it because the consistency of these things has been one of the attributes that have led me to success in all areas of my life. The first thing is consistency and discipline. I early in my life adopted the philosophy that, repetition is the mother of every skill. And it has been that for me in every area of my life that I put time and attention to, and that everything I started, I was horrible at when I started, or I wish to be better than when I was. And, I had this imagination that I was going to get in and start something. It was just going to be so easy and effortless. I was going to be a natural, right? And really being frustrated with my results, yet never given the opportunity as a young child to quit. That was always an agreement that my father made with me, that if I started something, that I had to finish it I could choose not to do it next season, like say a sport, yet that I had to finish what I started. And just at the point, just beyond the point that I wanted to quit every single time, and everything that I've started that I sucked at, I wanted to quit. And in my younger years, even until my 20s, my dad said, hey, you got to finish this and then go to the next chapter. And it was just after that all of a sudden I had enough repetition, and with the frustration and with there was no other option, the quitting was not an option, that all of a sudden I had developed enough skills that I started to see success. And so that consistency of showing up and the discipline to do so, even when it was bad weather, the circumstances weren't right, broken, beat down, mentally, emotionally, physically, whatever, that you just had to keep showing up and be consistent and disciplined to get the repetition in to develop the skill. And I look back now at, I'm almost 50, I'm 48 years old, and every area of my life that has been true. If I could go back to the younger Charlie and just say, man, just stay the course. Yeah. So that was definitely something that's huge. If I looked at it in all the athletics, which was my foundation for life, was that I had to go to practice every day. I had to be disciplined to get good grades, to be able to go to practice based on my agreements with my father. And then that consistency of showing up at practice then allowed me to play in the game under pressure where you grow, right? And so that was it just goes back to the repetition being a mother skill. That's definitely number one.
Love it a lot. I take notes as we go, but I gotta pause you before you do number 2 and number 3, because I think that I may know something about you here, because if I recall, when you're one of the top 11 wakeboarders in the world, when you're a pioneer in the wakeboard world, if I recall, you landed your first flip you ever tried.
Yes, I did.
You were not a failure when you started.
Well, I landed my first. God's design is so perfect. That first, me landing a flip for when I tried it for the first time in front of a massive group of people on Lake Tahoe, California, in front of chambers, and the response that I received from them, viewing that happen, unbeknownst to me at the time, but pulling up to that dock to go celebrate, because it was huge. I mean, it's outside of my realm of really possibility at that moment. That led me to having this vision for the sport that, oh my gosh, this is going to happen. I have a greater fear of it happening without me than I do of failing at it. Led me to 3 days later calling my friends and family and saying, listen, I'm dropping out of school. I'm moving to Florida. I'm going to become a pro wakeboarder, which everybody called me crazy because it didn't exist to them. But Dan, I didn't land that flip again for months. Wow. Trying it every single day. I knocked out teeth. I tore my abdomen. It was punishing. And yet God in my life, that happened. And I had I didn't have the fundamentals. I didn't have the skills, right? I didn't have the awareness of what I'd actually done to repeat it. I had to go through those trials and repetition to learn that, so that I could repeat it at will and my own style. So, man. Yeah.
I did not remember that part of the story, because that to me is the glue to the whole thing. That's amazing.
Well, I'm pretty sure I didn't tell that part of the story then. In my insecurity.
We got you in the right chair today to tell.
Yeah.
All right. So I wrote down number 1, consistency and discipline. How number 2 and number 3?
Number 2 is actually with what my dad taught me when I was a kid. Again, my first mentor, Gary Patterson, and he there was no option of quitting, right? That a decision was made when I started something. And what I later learned was that just that word, to decide.
Yeah.
Decide, right? Like you break that down, the roots of it in Latin is, and what's there? Decide. And side, what does that mean? That means death, suicide, pesticide, homicide, all those things, and then death. And decide is death to all other options. And so to make a decision that I'm going to move forward here, anything that anywhere area that I have made a decision that I would do whatever it took, morally, ethically, within my control, ask for guidance from my higher power, knock on the doors, look, ask the questions, seek, pray, like everything that I could possibly do and take action, that there was no other option except forward progress. And that was, I will persist until I succeed. It's just, I've got to put in the time. I've got to put in the repetition, no matter what my outside circumstances are. I have to go under pressure, right? If I want to get better traction in the snow, I got to increase the load. There's universal laws and principles that require us to go through this adversity, and it's not going to be easy. If I want something bigger and better, I have to become or be bigger and better. And so that's a process. It doesn't happen overnight. And looking back at my creator's plan, it's like I can look back and see like, oh, how this happened, and that seemed like the worst thing that could ever happen. Yet, oh my gosh, if that hadn't happened, this wouldn't have happened. And because I stayed the course and there was no option of quitting, not even mentioned, like not even talked about, death to any other option, then that's when, and I know Nathan mentioned this in his podcast with you, is that at the moment, and paraphrasing, at the moment that one commits, that providence moves to, and all sorts of unforeseen events, circumstances come his or her way in support of that decision, right? And I just have seen that come to the fruits of my labor everywhere with that, whether it's relationship, whether it's physical body and working out, business, athletics, relationship with my Lord, whatever it is.
Wow. Boy, people are taking notes. You can see it on the screen right there. Decide, death to all other options. I mean, Sharon's on here every week chiming in, and I had not heard it put that way. I remember when Justin Prince was on the show back in maybe September, and he talked about the difference between an incision and a decision. I think that was well said. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, I'm taking notes. Number 3 is?
What I mentioned a little bit of this before is just the law of sacrifice. Is that if I take a pendulum that swings equally, right? And let's say that I'm here, I have this type of results. I've gone through this much resistance and challenge. I paid this much price to have this prize. If I desire this, then by design, I have to go through this equal. I'm trying to get in the screen. There we go. It has to be equal. So if I'm down here and I want this, I have to be willing to go through that much more resistance and challenge. I mean, if I'm comfortable lifting a 50-pound weight and I want to lift 75, I have to put myself under more load and pressure and tension and resistance to build the muscle to be able to handle that 75-pound weight. Life has been the same thing to me. The law of sacrifice has been a way of managing expectations for me. Is that, it's always darkest before the dawn, or, there's breakdown before breakthrough. And looking back with 20/20 vision on my life, is that the most challenging moments were the most rewarding, because I grew from the moment, right? I mean, the same brain that creates a problem isn't the one that creates a solution. So we either seek counsel or we grow personally to look at it with a different perspective. But if we want and we desire more, right, we have to be willing to go through that resistance, that challenge. And when I say that, some people will hear, oh my gosh, it must be horrible, or it's going to be bad, or that must suck, whatever their language is. It doesn't have to. It's just a perspective on the situation. And I've been trained throughout my life to constantly write a story on the situation that works for me, that serves me, that how that's happening, that may be not what you want, but that it's on the way. And in order, like based on, okay, I said I'm going here, the universe has conspired into putting all this in its way, these fear flags and these challenges and these obstacles that I must grow to overcome. And they're perfect. They're on the way. They're not in the way. They're on the way.
Mm.
And so to accept them and find a perspective like this is exactly what's meant to happen. So what is the benefit? What am I focused on? Because that's going to expand. And if I'm focused on the drawback, don't want that to expand. So what's the benefit that I can find in there? Because nature is always a balance.
Yeah.
Nature is always in balance. There is always equal positive to negative, always equal benefit to drawback. And so just handling that in every situation and getting back into gratitude and in love, which is neutrality, right? Which is increasing your vibration, your frequency, because you're choosing a perspective, entanglement in science, right? In quantum physics to increase your vibration and move forward. And so that law of sacrifice, just manage the expectations, knowing that there's going to be resistance, challenge, and it's on the way.
I mean, I tell you what a highlight. I mean, that's a podcast in and of itself to hear you share that. And I say that with an audience that's watching that has a lot of accolades for you and the great Bill Toth is in here chiming in. We've got Dorothy and Julie and Sharon and Cheryl Lee Waters. And I mean, it's just some beautiful people. We got Austria in the house. Boy, oh boy, it is just great to have you. I don't know if
you just mentioned like a numerous amount of people that shaped my life, right?
Yeah.
And stood beside me, stood in front of me, stood behind me, and really guided me and directed me as you have, Dan. I mean, I will forever remember you mentioned Israel, being in Israel, right? Being that backstage with you, Nathan, and Lon, and me sitting there, the four of us, and looking at you and going, how. I'm in my second year of business with you guys. I'm like, how do I become you? And you guys handed me a book and you said, you know what, Charlie, this is a gift from us to you. And we encourage you to work as much as you do on the business, work on yourself. And I was like, what? I mean, I'd never heard that before. I was like, me? What? Oh, you mean I have answers? Like, I mean, it was a life-changing event for me. I will forever remember being backstage in that auditorium at that event and being with the three of you that have had profound influence on my life, in addition to the others that you just mentioned.
Isn't it interesting that I want to say that I don't remember how many hours we were on that stage and backstage in front of that group that day with hundreds of people in that auditorium that housed us. But if I'm not mistaken, it was a wooden chair with steel legs. I mean, I can remember where we were sitting. I can remember that vibe, that feeling. And it's amazing how I've never been back there. I just remember that day, that moment, that conversation, 2008, 7, 9.
No, I think it was even earlier because we opened the market into 2004. I think it was the first anniversary or second. So it was either 2005 or 2006.
You could be right. Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. I have
my teeth. Friend that's a great athlete like you, and he's the kind of guy, after winning 2 Olympic gold medals, and the guy really had never been injured in his life until last year. He crashed his bike a couple of times, but here's a guy, Peter Vidmar, and like you were saying, I mean, whenever I'm around him in a workout setting or something that could be challenging, I mean, I hear from him. Almost like water off a duck's back, Charlie, kind of like you just said, it's just pain. It's just pain leaving the body, And I mean, this athlete can put up a lot of pain, right? And you've trained hard, and greetings from Hungary, Janos, if I said your name right, Janos, Koran, I hope, I don't know, but it's great to have you here. There's so many great things that I think you and I, where we could go here. You mentioned a moment ago, scroll number 3. And scroll number 3 or 4?
Yeah, I said scroll number 3. Yeah.
Yeah, I will persist until I succeed. Do you remember was I the first one to give you that book or
you were? Yeah, you were. From your Saturday training that you've done so many years, right?
Yeah.
And give me the opportunity, ask me to be a guest on there, and covering it on the fourth week of the month. And yeah, it's just, yeah, it was a huge impact on me, and then outside of really, us working together in business, I remember, I think it was like Matthew McConaughey's first Oscar or something, to stand on stage, and he pulled out and he's like, because of this book, and I'm like, whoa, what? Matthew McConaughey Valentine? It was just like, so it's a departure for me from this space, but it was just like, oh my gosh, like this book is influential, and it can impact you every area of your life, right? It's not just about sales.
Right.
Yeah. Which I mean, isn't life about that? But
it's interesting you say that, because I was sitting here in this very chair. It was 2 Aprils ago, because I remember, maybe it was 3. I think it was 2. But I'm watching, my favorite week of the year for watching television is the Masters, the golf tournament in Augusta, Georgia. And I like watching the press conferences and hearing what the guys are saying. And all of a sudden, Rory McIlroy, the number 1 player in the world, the guy's won 4 majors, he's made hundreds of millions of dollars, flies around in a G550. And they say, what was the best book you read this year? And he said, it was probably The Greatest Salesman in the World. I'm like, whoa, I paused the TV, I rewind it, I take pictures. And like you said, it is really for everyone, not just those that are aspiring. So I'm curious. Hello, France. It's great to have you in the house. And, I can't believe we've already been going 20 minutes, but I'm curious if when you did read this for the first time, being a competitive athlete, and you're going through this mind shift, and you're learning from Nathan, and you're learning from all these incredible upline leaders, if you will, and friends on the journey that are here. Was reading a big part of your life prior to that?
No, not at all. I mean, I can remember being where I lived in Orlando, Florida for 20 years, where I was when we met. And, I'd see a billboard of Tony Robbins, and I'd just be like, who goes to that stuff? Man, those people are crazy. They must be crazy people, right? They're broken people. And, I mean, it was just so and being an athlete is, it's just such a narrow focus on yourself. I mean, it's really just ego. And I wasn't exposed to any personal development, not until after that conversation, Dan, with you guys. And then there was just a layering of it, where it's like, no matter where I went, Sandy Tillotson helped me make a list of my dream wife, and then asking me if I was that list. And I was like, no, I mean, that's a woman. And she's like, no, are you these things? And I was like, I'm some of them. She's like, well, when you are all of these things, you will attract that woman into your life, and you need to work on yourself to become that list. And then there was a series of events that happened that just kept reinforcing, Charlie, look in the mirror, right? Wow. Look at your blind spots, pay attention and ask the questions. The quality of learning, my quality of my life was determined by the quality of the questions that I would ask, or what I would look for. And so all of a sudden, my radar it shifted to a different focus. And it became very, just reading and digging in and asking, give me a list of books. And you give me a list of books. Kenton Worthington, give me a list of books. Yes. Nathan, One Wardrobe handed me the book. It's in my office. I'm like, man, I should have grabbed that book too for this interview. But it's, it has Lon's name on it. It's just like, just priceless investment. You guys had, what I also love, Dan, is that you and Lon specifically, Jeff Mack, a list of other leaders that have invested in me, zero financial invested interest in me, yet took me under your wings, and my life changed because you were willing to invest in me. And I wouldn't be here where I am if it wasn't for you guys' dramatic influence on all areas of my life. I mean, I went sober, celibate because of you guys, because of your teachings and the questions I would ask that ultimately led me to meet my wife. And I mean, honestly, and now I have 5 children, Dan.
I know.
Because of you, Dan.
and you had your first one. Isn't her name Charlie Rose?
Charlie. Yep, Charlie.
Rose.
Yep.
Not Charlie Rose?
Yeah, well, I call her Charlie. She calls herself Charlie Rose.
Okay, because I have a Kennedy Rose as one of my grandkids.
Yeah.
But then you had 4 show up in a single day, and you mentioned the law of sacrifice. And I gotta say that when I have been in the room for the daughters having babies, the grandest experience, the most spiritual experience, there's nothing that compares. And you got 4 in was it an hour?
In 3 minutes.
Oh.
In 3 minutes. I mean, it's less than that. It's like 2.5 minutes. It's the greatest gift. I remember when Charlie was born and seeing her crown, and I went from, it's like it felt really removed as a father with your wife expecting. Maybe it's just me, but it just really, I wasn't real. Even though her stomach's growing, even the first time that my wife Christy and I felt Charlie kick was when I put my head on her stomach and she kicked for the first time, my head. And then, man, when I saw her head crowning, whoa, I mean, it's emotional now. It's like, I'd never felt a feeling or joy like that in my life. Immediate, right? I mean, just immediate, unconditional love. And then when we went to the doctor to confirm that we're pregnant with our next, and they told us, yeah, you're gonna have 4 babies in 6 months, which was not expected, not planned, nowhere on our radars, not even any chance of possibility in our realm of reality. And then going through the process of having, first 3 doctors tell us that we couldn't do that. We had to reduce to 2 babies from 4.
Wow.
It go back to, we had so much incredible guidance and just unconditional love from Nathan and Joyce Ricks and others that we consulted in this situation, because it was really heavy. I mean, we were like, God gave us these 4 babies. Who are we to decide and like cancel that out and reduce, or not any judgment on anyone that does that in that situation, because it's very, very scary. It's life and death. But we prayed, and we just made a decision that whatever the outcome, we were moving forward. Whatever the outcome, we were going to use every principle that we'd learned in athletics, as my wife's a professional athlete as well, and everything we learned in business and all of our teachings, and we would apply it here. It was perfect. Everything that led us up to that moment in our life was perfect. We had the tools, seek counsel. And once we made a decision, there was no other option. And when we did make a decision, we attracted a doctor that was a specialist, and he said, what do you want? We're like, God gave us 4 babies. We want to have 4 babies, healthy, and a healthy mom in January. And he said, let's do that. And he said, as long as you believe it here, then that's what's going to happen. And I got a perfect record. So he's like, it's that pressure on you. And that's what happened. I mean, it was the most difficult thing my wife and I had ever gone through in our life. And yet the most rewarding, I mean, now we got these kids that I'm up on the mountain almost every single day with at least 1 or 2 of the kids. And again, I've never felt joy like I am skiing with my kids, and just, man, it's, well, you got grandkids and 4 daughters, and preaching the choir.
It's really amazing what I find when I get to hand select those that come on the show. And, now this is 32 out of 32 episodes. I feel that genuine authenticity from what you just said. And that was, the quality of your life is based on the quality of the questions you ask. And it seems as though you asked a lot of very empowering questions. You searched out mentors' advice of people that you had high trust and respect for. You were on your knees praying for guidance. And I wonder if, when you think about that those questions, and then now you've got an organization that goes, I don't know how many countries around the globe, Africa, Israel, America, Asia, wherever your teams have taken you and grown, all over the world. I mean, from when we met, a long-haired, wakeboarding, beach bum looking guy, fit as a fiddle, and now transformed. Like I love the book of Romans 12:2. Be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. That worked for you. That happened for you. How do you go about teaching that and trying to get others to aspire to that on your team and get the best out of them?
A lot of reflection, right, Dan? I mean, I asked myself, because I've watched history repeat itself over and over and over. You know, I mean, because literally what happened with our business, New Scan, is the exact same thing that happened in wakeboarding, which is the exact same thing happened in my childhood in regards to my dad. My dad, he taught me like, hey, it's okay to only not know something one time.
Mm.
And that's where my questions came from, that when I was young, I would stop someone mid-sentence and say, hey, what does that mean? I don't know that word, or I don't know that acronym, or what was it? And I don't know if that's just me, my high level of competence, need to be competent, is that it's okay for me to not know something once, but if not knowing it twice, that means I'm not competent. And so it really, I just hungry. I've always just been very hungry to learn, and knowing that, okay, if I'm gonna, if I believe that I'm gonna be the average of the people that I hang out with, then I want to be the dumbest person in the room. I want to be the poorest person in the room. Not poor, but have the least amount of money, or say that I'm dumb. I'm a smart human, but I don't want to be the smartest. I don't want to be the richest in the room, and just constantly staying a student. And I think back, it was really humbling to me coming from my professional athletic career, where everywhere I went, I was either being paid to be there or I was promoted to be there. And then I enter business with you guys, and I'm not. And I remember my first, like, at least 3 events where Nathan said, don't miss an event, don't go alone. So I was like, I heard, be at every event, be there with people, like a pro tour stop. You're going to be pro, you go to the pro tour. Doesn't matter if it's what the weather is. Doesn't matter if you've blown out your knee. You go to the pro tour stop because you're a pro. So I was like, cool, I can go to our events. And the first like 2 or 3 events, I kept going up to you and Lon, because Nathan told me, hey, be around those guys. I'm going to be gone. Find Lon and Dan. And so, and I'm like in the very beginning, right? I'm like, Nathan, I'm going to be at the top of the comp plan in 11 months. What do I do? And he told me what to do, but he was like all over the planet. Here's my sponsor saying, hey, go to your brothers, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so I would come see you guys, and it was like, hey, what's your name? You didn't remember my name. And it, like, dude, it was like so humbling. And I would get so irritated and frustrated and go back and, okay, I'm going back. What do I need to do? He's like, find Lon and Dan. And so I'd go finding, it was like the 3rd, 4th month or so, all of a sudden you guys are like, Charlie, you're here. And how's it going? And you start to remember my name. And so I had a lot of reflection on that. Like, why did Lon and Dan say you specifically, because you have so many times in my life you've done this, is that you invested in me, and it was like, okay, what was it about me? And this is my own perspective. Like, okay, they told me what to do. I went and did it. I got the results they expected. I came back. And then I asked what to do, and you told me something else to do. I went and did it. I got the results. I came back. And I was consistently showing up. Like, you saw me, I didn't miss any event for 14 years until Christy was in the hospital. And so for me, it's like, just, if someone is coachable, teachable, and willing to change, I can work with them. I don't care what their beginnings are. If they're coachable, if they have an empty cup and they're willing to go apply, right, what we guide them to do, they're going to get the outcome that we know they will get. And if they don't get the outcome, then there's metrics there. We can adjust what's working, what can improve, fine tune, go back out to work. And I mean, I haven't said this to you before, but I feel like that's the case, because every time I would see you, I remember walking into an event and you're like, hey, next month, or, in January or February, I'm not going to be here. You're going to be the MC. And I remember exactly where I was standing in the Wells Fargo building. So I'm like, against the wall. I'm like, my worst nightmare has become like a reality.
Oh,
like,
I remember that.
I'm not ready. And you're like, well, what are they going to do? What are you going to do when they call your name and I'm not here and you're in the room? You're going to go up there. So just accept it. Well, a month later, I walk into the kickoff event of the company in LA, and first we see it. I had, for whatever reason, got a thing about bow ties. I had a black suit on. I had a black bow tie. It wasn't a tux, but you're like, hey, you're wearing a tux. Perfect. You're MC tonight. And I was like, you know, I was like, why is Dan doing this to me?
That's great.
And it was like this pressure that I underwent. And, every time it was like this massive investment in me that I just, when it was over, I was like I was walking on clouds because it didn't kill me, right? I said yes. And it's so easy to invest in people when they're coachable, they're hungry to change, and they'll go out and apply what you do.
Man, I remember that. I'm gonna make a comment. Maybe somebody will write it down like this. I mean, I'm gonna just say this off the top of my head that great leaders, not only do they live, they love, they learn, but great leaders not only accept challenges, but they give challenges. And I like challenging people to do things for the first time if you see the talent and the desire in someone. So for you to remind me of that, I mean, I almost got tears in my eyes just laughing and having fun and feeling the emotion and really remembering your face the first time, because I do remember that so clearly. Oh, my goodness. Charlie, we've been talking for 36 minutes, and I have to pause for a minute. I have to just, on behalf of the Og Mandino Company, let me just say thank you for our audience listening. The Og Mandino Company has really been a game changer for my life. Not only the books, but the people. And to know Dave and Paul Blanchard and what they give back to the world of coaching. For 20 years, they've been a coaching company. And I'm going to, as hopefully the Og Mandino ambassador, give you a new challenge today. And that is, if you haven't looked at what has changed the Og Mandino Company in 60 to 90 days, like the most profound shift in the history of the company, I'm going to encourage my producer to put up the screen right now. Go to habitfinder.com/social VIP. And let me tell you what happened. A client of the Og Mandino Company paying to have a professional coach is a white hat hacker. Like we're talking the DOD, the White House. He's a white hat hacker. And Paul Blanchard says to this individual that I'll never know his name because nobody can know his name, said, hey, look, can you teach this stuff to our people? And he says, no, there's no way. No one can know my name. I can't be on social. And so Paul says, well, what if I create the course? Can you help us? He says, absolutely. And lo and behold, when that course came out in December, the Og Mandino Company forever will be changed, because 2.5 billion people, 3 billion people on Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, all these places, and this white hat hacker is in your back pocket for $297 to help you and coach you, to guide you when to post, why to post, what to comment on, what not to comment on. So I hope that today you'll go to habitfinder.com/social VIP. And the attitude at the Og Mandino Company is always about serve and how do we give more. And so when I asked them for permission to be the host of the podcast, I kind of envisioned 32 episodes like this, Charlie. And it's just, I mean, I am just so fired up and to see what our listeners today are responding to. And of course, I'm only watching Facebook. I don't see YouTube or what'll come out on the webpage. Perhaps I may even miss that. You can go to thegreatestsalesman.com, and all of the podcasts are in blog form. You can go to thegreatestsalesman.com and pull up any of the 30 plus episodes. I think they take there's always a few week lag in getting them up on the website. But Charlie, when I look back on our first 36 minutes here, 37 minutes, I mean, I want to thank you in advance. We're not done yet because I think there's more for us to discover and share. But it always feels like I'm the one being taught, and it always feels like I'm the one that gets the most out of this. And I'm just so absolutely fired up about what you had to say here today, and to think about the consistency and the discipline, number one, that you mentioned, and to think how easy it would have been for you to look at that book and Og to challenge you, because Og challenged you. Remember, great leaders challenge. Justin Prince taught us that early on. Great leaders challenge. What does Og say? I'll give you 75 to 1 odds, he says at the beginning of The Greatest Secret in the World, the journalized version. He says, I'll give you 75 to 1 odds that you won't finish the book doing it the way he asked you to do. What made you finish the scrolls and change your life in magnificent way? We've got people that are watching right now that want this multi-million-dollar team around the globe. They want to be in Israel. They want to be on the beaches. They want to be on the ski slopes with the kids. What made you say, I'm going to do this?
Man, honestly, a greater fear of what would happen if I didn't. I know some people are really motivated, or I'd say even more importantly, inspired from within to go out and do the work for something that they desire, that they feel is pleasurable, that, a new car, the house, the travel, the money. Some people are actually more inspired on what'll happen if they don't, right? And I guess I'm inspired a little bit by both, but I've always had more of a fear of being really out of shape. That's driven me to be consistent in the gym. And now I have, every decade I've had a goal of being in better shape than the decade before. And today at 48, I'm in the best shape of my life ever, and keep being directed to things that keep healing my body and improving my body and what nature provides. And in business, I mean, when I made the pivot from a professional athletic career to our business of distribution and sales, and really the greatest investment that I think that could ever be made, which is in another human. I mean, that's what you do, Dan, right? You invested in me, and the ripple effect that's had on millions of others, that we've all have that influence of the ripple in the pond, right? Throw the rock in the pond and see where the waves go. But it was because in the linear income that I had as an athlete, that when I stopped, that income would stop, that I hadn't looked for anything else. I didn't know that anything else existed, right? So I started asking a different question, read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, understood the 4 quadrants, started to ask questions about how do I create a leveraged income. That led me to meeting Nathan. And then, it was really the fear of living in the past, where I was like, man, I don't want to live in the glory days of my athletic career. I don't want to say, oh my gosh, like, man, wasn't it great when? Yeah, I want to reminisce and look at the influences that have been on my life, but I want bigger, better, and more for the future of my life, not in that now isn't enough, just in constant, a growth, and staying in growth versus, decay, right? Because it's either growth or decay. There's not a stability phase I've ever found. It's one or the other. And so that fear of going backwards, the fear of the pain, I've found to be more inspiring for me, than it is to actually chase the pleasure. And the delayed gratification, that because I've stayed in the lane of what's highest value to me, that it's easy to stay in delayed gratification and weather the pain and the repetition of things to develop the skill, because I feel like I have a never-ending supply of energy for the things that I hold in high value, and coming from a place of true choice. So I'm guessing you weren't expecting that answer. But
I love it. A never-ending energy towards the things that you aspire to acquire, if you will.
That I value, right? Which isn't static. So when I was I had a desire to become one of the top paid wakeboarders in the world. I never turned it off. I never needed a vacation. I literally never took a day off for 10 years, or more than that. And then when I started, with Nu Skin, I didn't take a day off for the first 4 years, and it was 12, 14, 16, 18, 20-hour days. And it was like I could not get enough. I mean, it was just until I learned, like, wow, there was actually some benefit for me to take a day off, and how I could lead others better, how I could sharpen the saw. There's a reason that God created the earth 6 days, rested the seventh. There's a pattern here that I could learn and improve from. And so I made adjustments that have, just been hugely rewarding and refilling so that I could actually do more in the time that I was working. But when you work with someone that what they're doing is in their highest values, or they see what they're doing, how it connects to their highest values, there's no off switch, right? And it's a renewable source of energy versus something that's low value that you procrastinate with, right? You don't have energy for. Likewise, so that's been a huge tool for me.
There's an observation that I want to make about you, and I would like to see if we can have a little discussion about it, because it's pretty interesting. Obviously, for anyone that ever had a chance to watch Og's videos, to read his books, his writings, whether you're reading The University of Success or The Choice or The Greatest Success, The Greatest Salesman, The Gift of Akbar, whatever, he penned so many great books. You have a natural humility in expressing gratitude to others that assist you in some way, shape, or form. And it's rare that you and I talk that you don't remind me about one of the events or things that we've done. And you've picked up on that with others. And I just wonder how you've developed, you're sitting at my house, my wife and I, we have our 4 girls up in Idaho, and you and your beautiful bride. I'm not even sure if you guys were married yet. Were you married yet?
We had just recently married. Yeah,
we just got married. We're out wakeboarding on Lake Coeur d'Alene and whatnot, and I mean, you often remind me of little things like that. I just wonder where your vision of gratitude comes from, and how does it expound every day? Do you think about it? Do you have a gratitude journal? I mean, that's a big thing for a lot of people, or is it just something that you kind of naturally express?
I think that it was a little bit learned, right? I mean, edification. I learned that along my journey with you guys. Just, I think by the atmosphere, the environment that I'd been in, becoming a byproduct, becoming a product of that, right? I mean, I learned how to introduce, edify, people from you. And I honestly, I've never been asked this question. I want to find this a huge compliment, because I really want people to know how they've impacted my life.
Yeah.
And it is, I mean, there have been people that have invested in me like yourself that have just, I don't think you could ever know how much you truly have influenced me, and how I think about these things often. And because I'm in the process of teaching them, and I speak to them a lot, so they're on the forefront of my mind, because I'm still in that lane of, coaching and challenging and investing in people, working with them to help them get what they want. It's, I don't know. It brings me to tears. Like, I think about like so many of those moments that we've had. Coeur d'Alene, like my wife, we are in your house with your family, reading a book at the end of the night. She's like, I want that to be our family tradition. Yeah. She still talks about it. I got an interview with Dan. She's like, oh, I love being with their family in Coeur d'Alene. It was all the girls and their husbands, their kids, and it's the end of the night, and we're sitting in your house. And, those moments are just so influential, if you allow them to be, right? There was no social media. There was no like distractions. I really wish I had an answer for you.
That's okay.
I'm grateful. Yeah, I think it was learned. I really do believe it's learned from the environment, right? We're the average of what we hang around. And I have just had the greatest mentors. I mean, you guys have just shaped my life in so many ways.
Well, I want to shift towards closing here in a minute, but I don't want to minimize what you just said, because someday I bought these at the Tattered Covered Bookstore. I got the date on them in Denver, Colorado from 2/1/1998, before you and I met, years before you and I met. And I bought for each of my daughters. You mentioned the books that we would read. They read the scrolls with me when they were young kids. And so they still know about them today. And I know that all of your children are going to have their little ancient scrolls books, and I know you're going to read with them. And you know, Stephen Covey taught my wife in college as a professor, and he said, when you're raising your kids, you're raising your grandkids. And so I'm confident that you're doing
that. Dude, I've never felt any greater joy. I mean, I said it earlier, I really believe in such great value I get out of our business is that the greatest investment that I feel like I could make in business is in another human.
Yes.
And investing in that person, it's like, it's highest value to me. And now to be able to turn that to my kids, where my oldest is 6 and my youngest are 3, and, you know, teach them if I ask any of them right now, repetition, tell me about repetition. It's the mother of skill.
Exactly.
Practice makes, and they'll say improvement. And they'll say, I'm walking, my oldest is carrying a pair of skis, and one of my littles is traveling, you know, the 3-year-old I'll take the 2 of them skiing, one little and the old one, Charlie. And the little will be trailing behind, throwing themselves on the ground. I can't, baiting the snow, you know, 3-year-old. And I'm just laughing. People are looking at just like, well, what is he doing? And I'm like, come on, you can do it. I can't. I'm like, what does can't mean? Oh, figure it out. You know, and it's like, I get so much joy from those lessons and teaching, because I'm like, if I can teach them these principles that some of them I didn't learn formally until my 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, you know, we're not 50s yet, but can they learn them now, what their life can be, right? Yeah. And I'm like, man, okay, this is all perfect. I've learned everything I need to this point to invest in my kids. And that the first, 45 years of my life was really about Charlie and focus there, Charlie, then about Charlie and Christy. Now it's about the next chapter is the investment in my kids, and we ask them, what's our job? What's mom and dad's job? To protect me and teach me. That's right.
Wow. Oh, this is great. We could go on and on about that, but I want to close. I know that we've given everybody the challenge of cracking the social code, or habitfinder.com/cracking the social code. She can put that across the screen there again, but I'm going to ask you a closing question here. habitfinder.com/social VIP. I gave you about 6 different websites to go to. I think we can go with the actual one that works there. And that is, if you're looking to tap into get out of the pond, as the white hat hacker likes to say, get out of the pond of Facebook and get into the ocean. And that's what you're going to find out how to do at habitfinder.com/social VIP. Charlie, I know you are a vociferous reader. I've got a lot of books behind me here. I've cleaned out my library. I've trimmed it back. I've got walls all around me here. If we weren't talking about the greatest salesman in the world today, which we have been, okay, Og Mandino, this unbelievable life of consistency and principles, what are you going to share with the group today? If we're not talking about that book today, what's on your mind? What's in your library? What are you reading?
Immediately 2 books. And if I was in my office, I'm now in my wife's space right now, but in my office, again, same thing, library of books behind me. The first book is Willpower Doesn't Work by Benjamin Hardy.
Wow.
And that has boiled down to success principles that I have seen. Nathan recommended that book to me years ago, became my #1 favorite book of really principles of success. Willpower Doesn't Work by Benjamin Hardy. The second book, Dan, I recommend for all parents. Again, another book that Nathan Ricks recommended that Christy and I read is called Entitled Mania.
Oh my gosh.
How not to spoil your kids and what to do if you have. And it has been hugely profound for us in what we do with, our money, our estate, our wealth. And it doesn't mean you have to have all this money. It just means what you teach your kids. And it's incredible. 2 favorite books.
Tell you a funny story about that, about how I found that. A friend of mine knows that guy in Newport Beach, California. He's a lawyer. He writes the book Entitled Mania. So I'm talking to him one day and he says, look, if you ever need to go to breakfast, I can tell you where he'll be, at what time, every morning, and he would love to meet you. Wow. And I never forget my friend Mitch Hill that told me to get that book. And I think I've told just about everybody to read Entitled Mania, because if you live in a world where you feel like you're entitled, it's time to read Entitled Mania, because this lawyer has seen it all of every angle, of every wealth person, and he writes about it beautifully. So, wow, what a read. Willpower Doesn't Work by Benjamin Hardy, Entitlemania, another one, and his name is escaping me. The book's in my bedroom.
Me too.
It's escaping me. But, Charlie, I know that this has just been a thrill for our listeners today. And I just can't thank you enough for, one, being a friend, and two, being a leader, and being an incredible example of what life can grow into. I mean, your wife is beautiful. Your family is beautiful. You invest in them all, and those relationships, you take the time. And I mean, it's just a thrill to have you. And I can't thank you enough for coming on the Greatest Salesman podcast today.
Thank you. Likewise, Dan, and hello to your family. We love you guys, and grateful to have you be a part of our life, not only 17 years ago, but now, today, and forward. Thank you.
Yeah. Sharon put it well right there. Rewatch this. Very impactful. I'll be taking notes as I rewatch, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Dan McCormick on behalf of the Og Company and the Greatest Salesman podcast. He's the amazing Charley Patterson from the beautiful state of Oregon. Have the greatest day of your life, and bye for now, everybody.